It's December 26, 1973, and the newest holiday movie directed by William Friedkin has hit the cinema. Families are flocking to see this newest movie because, after all, Friedkin's last film was The French Connection. It was the winner of Best Picture at the 1971 Academy Awards. However, this newest holiday release, it was getting reactions like this.
My experience with this movie has been incredible, especially with people fainting. Halfway through the movie, the movie starts getting quite violent, and people get quite unusual reactions, and we have a lot of people throwing up and a lot of people shuddering. But the thing that really surprises me is people faint. I mean, I've never in my life known a movie where people would faint. I mean, it's hard to make people faint.
God, I was so scared when the bed was shaking and like her back.
She's going up and down.
And then when her voice changed, my God, I've never seen anything like
Did
it.
you see the part where she turns her head around?
Not yet. I'm not gonna see it either.
I fainted like 10 minutes after the first beginning of the movie. And I walked out and they gave me some water.
I passed out in about the first half hour, yeah.
Do you remember what it was, what scene it was that affected you so much?
Convulsions, when she took convulsions.
Even with audiences reacting like that, this film would go on to be nominated for 10 awards at the 46th Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actress, and would even go on to win for Best Adapted Screenplay and Best Sound. How does a critically acclaimed holiday movie generate so much controversy? What's making people throw up and pass out? Was it the very first Hallmark movie? Was it the Star Wars holiday special?
Come on, Mama, let's see a little smile. Come on. There, that's better.
Surprisingly, no to that one. If you haven't guessed it already, or you're just not a film buff, this holiday movie is The Exorcist. I've talked about The Exorcist briefly before in my Mothman video, as some people believe Mothman is the demon in The Exorcist, but if you know nothing about The Exorcist, here's a quick elevator pitch. A 12-year-old girl named Regan is possessed by the demon Pazuzu, and two Catholic priests must work together to exorcise the demon and save Regan. I mean, that honestly sounds like a fantastic Catholic priest buddy cop movie if you ask me. To this day, The Exorcist continues to have cultural relevance and made possession into a horror film staple. And like most horror movies, The Exorcist wasn't based on anything real, right? Right? Our story begins in Leipzig, West Germany in 1952, where Anneliese Michel was born on September 21, 1952. Anneliese was born to Anna and Joseph Michel. The Michels were a devout and straight Catholic household where the family attended Mass twice a week. Anneliese would live a normal life until 1968, where at the age of 16, she experienced her first episode. Anneliese suddenly blacked out at school and began walking around in a daze. Though Anneliese had no memory of this event, her friends and family said she was in a trance-like state. Doctors would soon diagnose Anneliese with temporal lobe epilepsy, a condition linked to hallucinations and visual disorders. Temporal lobe epilepsy, or TLE, is the most common form of focal epilepsy. About 6 out of 10 people with focal epilepsy have TLE. Humans have 2 temporal lobes, one on each side of their brain. These are located behind your temple and extend from your eye to your ear. These areas process emotions and are important for short-term memory. Medial temporal lobe epilepsy usually begins around age 10 or 20, but it can start at any age. Some people have odd feelings during the seizure, such as joy, deja vu, or fear, and that's called an aura, although not everyone experiences an aura. Seizures often do not stop with medication, unfortunately, and even in some cases, surgery to remove the area causing the seizure is the best option for treatment. Anneliese would continue to experience hallucinations and seizures for another year, which led her to being hospitalized in a psychiatric hospital and medicated in 1969, 1 year after her very first episode. Despite the treatment, though, her mental health would decline. She experienced depression, paranoia, and even suicidal ideation. Her condition baffled doctors as medications seemed to have little effect on her. When examined by neurologist Dr. Siegfried Luthi, her EEG, or brain scan, showed a normal physiological alpha-type brain activity. Anneliese's family, deeply religious and believing in the supernatural, sought the assistance of the Catholic Church after medical treatments failed to improve her condition. In 1973, Anneliese's condition would worsen to the point to where her family firmly believed they needed religious interference, as Anneliese would begin showing a severe aversion to religious objects. She claimed that crucifixes burned her skin and that she couldn't walk past churches. Anneliese also reported hearing knocking in her bedroom, which her sisters actually heard as well, and Anneliese said a voice was damning her to hell, although Anneliese was the only one who could hear the voice. Anneliese would soon show disturbing behavior, including drinking her own urine and hiding under tables and growling like an animal. Anneliese would only sleep 1 or 2 hours at night, spending all night running through the house or in prayer and screaming to Jesus Christ for mercy. Despite her fervent praying, she also destroyed rosaries or religious pictures hanging on the wall. She would genuflect an estimated 400 to 600 times a day, though accounts vary on that number, but it got to the point that her knees would swell. This would cause Joseph and Anna to beg the church to perform exorcisms on their daughter. Exorcisms have been in the Catholic Church since the beginning of the religion. According to Stephen Oakey, a theologian and assistant professor of philosophy, theology, and religion at St. Leo University in Florida, exorcism is a prayer or ritual that is meant to remove the influence of demonic, evil power over a person. It's pretty easy to understand, and honestly, it's probably exactly what you thought an exorcism is. The first mention of an exorcism, though, was written around AD 70, where the first mention of Jesus casting away evil spirits appears in the Gospel of Mark. We're gonna jump to the 1520s as exorcisms would change with the split in Christianity known as the Protestant Reformation, thanks to one Martin Luther. During this time, Protestant exorcisms were mostly conducted through prayer and fasting, and often involved entire communities, resulting in a public affair that could border on performance. According to Catherine Walker, who's an assistant professor of English specializing in the history of magic at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, Protestants increasingly viewed the entire rituals surrounding exorcisms with hostility. And while that shift led to exorcisms fizzling out among Protestants by the early 1600s, its presence in the period's literature helped form its enduring cultural legacy. Protestantism continued to spread throughout parts of Europe and eventually made its way to North America in the 17th century by way of British colonists. Due to the Great Awakenings in the 1730s and 1740s, the 1790s, and from the late 1850s to the early 20th century, there was a lot of Great Awakenings, okay? Protestantism would change in America and birth the Baptist and Methodist denominations. Simultaneously, the 1800s also saw a rise in evangelicalism, which is an umbrella term applied to Protestant groups that believe in strict adherence to the Bible, being born again, the need to convert other people, and that the crucifixion of Jesus will lead to the salvation of humanity. While exorcisms had continued in the Catholic Church all along, they were not as prevalent in Protestant denominations throughout the 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries. In the 1960s and 70s, thanks to charismatic Christians, evangelists took to the airwaves, gaining access to Americans' homes through appearances on both radio and television. This led to the increasing number of mainline Protestants and even some Catholics to begin to adopt Pentecostal-style worship. Pentecostalism focused on the Holy Spirit and included supernatural components, like glossolalia, which is better known as speaking in tongues.
Let that Holy Ghost language come up out of you. Do it now.
Faith healing, miracles, and exorcisms, and with a renewed focus on the Holy Spirit, alongside the release of William Peter Blatty's 1971 novel, The Exorcist. Yes, that The Exorcist. exorcisms would once again become embedded in popular culture. And then a little holiday movie would release on December 26, 1973, based on William Peter Blatty's novel, and well, that's The Exorcist. So, now that I just sparks noted the history of exorcisms in the church for you, Anna and Joseph approached several priests to request an exorcism. But in a surprise twist, the church initially denied it and recommended Anneliese continue to be medically treated. However, Anneliese's parents would persist and claim that Anneliese was beyond medical help. After months and months of pleading for an exorcism, in 1975, two priests, Father Arnold Renz and Father Ernst Alt, were granted permission by Bishop Joseph Stangl to perform the rite of exorcism on Anneliese. The one condition: has to be performed in absolute secrecy. And on September 24th, 1975, the first official exorcism of Anneliese Michel occurred. During the exorcisms, the priests believed Anneliese was possessed by 6 demons. They were Lucifer, Judas, Nero, Cain, Hitler, and a disgraced priest named Fleischmann. Lucifer is, of course, a fallen angel and the devil in Christian theology. Don't really need to go into him too much. Judas was actually an apostle of Jesus and was the one who would eventually betray Jesus. Nero is known as one of Rome's most infamous rulers, notorious for his cruelty and debauchery. He actually ruled at a time of great social and political change in Rome and oversaw moments and events such as the Great Fire of Rome. Cain was the firstborn of Adam and Eve and would go on to kill his brother Abel out of jealousy, marking him as the very first murderer, and God would curse him with the mark of Cain. Hitler, well, yeah, he was a German dictator and led the Nazi party and is basically the whole reason why World War II started. I think everybody knows who Hitler is at this point. Fleischmann, however, he's a bit of a mysterious figure. You see, he was a priest who had been excommunicated from the church for bad behavior, and someone Anneliese would have no reason to know about at all. Yet, somehow, she was able to provide details on his life. Well, possibly, but we'll get into that later. The exorcisms of Anneliese Michel would last up to 4 hours and would happen as often as twice a week. The priests recorded over 40 audio tapes of the exorcisms, and in the audio, you can hear Anneliese's voice shifting dramatically, alternating between growls, screams, and even mocking taunts. She spoke in multiple languages, and sometimes simultaneously with different voices. And, lucky for you, I'm gonna play you a snippet from one of these audio recordings. But please, viewer discretion is advised, as this audio is unsettling and extremely disturbing.
Die müssen als Priester erkennbar sein. Und zweimal, kapiert? Heiraten dürfen sie auch nicht. Ein Auftrag von der. Ja! Mit ihrem Scheißding, wo sie da haben. Ich vergaß ihn. Ich schreit ihn aber ohne.
Ihr unreiner Geist alles zu sagen.
Ich bin nicht unrein, no.
Und des Heiligen Geistes. Im Namen Jesu und im Namen Maria befehle ich dir, unreiner Geist, alles zu sagen. Im Namen des Vaters und des Sohnes und des
Ja, das Scheißloch da ohne ist ich. Ja. Und das andere daneben.
Und die Klasse.
Ja. Und das Scheißloch da oben.
Welches noch?
Und das sage ich Ihnen nicht.
Im Namen Jesu.
Nein!
There are videos with subtitles that you can check out yourself. I don't speak German. I barely speak English correctly, so I have no way of knowing if those subtitles are accurate, but they're out there if you're curious and want to read them. Over the next 10 months, from September 1975 to July 1976, the priests conducted 67 exorcisms. Anneliese's health deteriorated rapidly over these 10 months, and she was frequently restrained so the priests could even conduct the exorcism rites. She stopped eating, suffered severe injuries from self-inflicted wounds, and engaged in extreme acts of religious devotion, such as kneeling repeatedly until her knees shattered. On July 1st, 1976, Anneliese Michel would pass away at the age of 23, with the official cause being malnutrition and dehydration. She only weighed 68 pounds at the time of her death, and her autopsy would reveal no traces of any medication in her system. After her death, Anneliese Michel's story became a national sensation in Germany after her parents and the 2 priests who conducted the exorcisms were charged with negligent homicide. In the end, the 2 priests were found guilty of manslaughter resulting from negligence and were sentenced to 6 months in jail, which would later be suspended, and they were also given 3 years of probation. The parents were exempt from any punishment as they had suffered enough, a criteria for sentencing in German law. Later, the Catholic Church altered their finding, stating that Anneliese was mentally ill and not possessed. In a 2005 interview with The Guardian, Anneliese's mother said she did not regret her daughter's death. She was bearing stigmata, and that was a sign from God that we should exorcise the demons. She died to save our lost souls, to atone for their sins, she would say. Anneliese's story would continue to live on with the internet, and with the release of The Exorcism of Emily Rose in 2005. Although the film isn't a one-to-one to Anneliese's story, it would be loosely based off of it. So, was Anneliese Michel possessed by demons? Trying to disprove God, the devil, and religion entirely is something some people have dedicated their whole lives to, and to be entirely honest, isn't really something I want to do, or even try. I have my own beliefs, and the point of these videos is to try to take the unexplainable and find a way to, well, explain it. So, this is my explainable answer to the possession of Anneliese Michel. There's a mental health condition that affects how people think, feel, and behave. I know that sounds like a lot of mental health conditions, but this condition may result in a mix of hallucinations, delusions, and disorganized thinking and behavior. The hallucinations involve seeing things or hearing voices that aren't observed by others. The delusions involve firm beliefs about things that aren't true, and people with this mental health condition can seem to lose touch with reality, which can make daily living very hard for them and those that are affected by it. If you haven't guessed it already, this mental health condition is schizophrenia. Schizophrenia can occur at any age, with the average age of onset tending to be in the late teens to the early 20s for men and the late 20s to early 30s for women. It is uncommon for schizophrenia to be diagnosed in a person younger than 12 or older than 40. There has also been evidence from the past 15 years that is showing environmental factors can influence the hallucinations caused by schizophrenia. According to Alan S. Brown, professor of psychiatry and epidemiology at Columbia University Medical Center, based on findings from other areas of medicine and early results from studies of schizophrenia, it appears increasingly likely that a large portion, if not the majority, of schizophrenia cases can be accounted for by interactions between environmental and genetic factors and by other mechanisms involving the subtle interplay between environments and genes. In 2014, anthropologist Tanya Lerman found that the voice-hearing experiences in schizophrenia are influenced by one's particular social and cultural environment, and this may have consequences for treatment. In the United States, the voices are harsher, and in Africa and India, more benign. Although this study was done on US, India, and African culture, it still supports that environments can play a factor in how one perceives reality and psychosis. There have also been studies that have studied how religion affects psychosis. One study evaluated religion in the context of psychopathology and suggested that Christian patients have more religious delusions, especially delusions of guilt and sin, than their counterparts belonging to other religions such as Islam. Another study reported higher prevalence of religious delusions of guilt in schizophrenia patients of Roman Catholic affiliations, when compared to that of Protestants and Muslims. So, was Anneliese Michel a victim of schizophrenia, and did her religious upbringing influence her condition? I definitely think that's plausible. With how strict her household was reported to be, it's not unreasonable to think that Anneliese could believe she was possessed by some of the worst religious and German figures. I mean, Your whole life being told you're gonna burn and go to hell for doing X, Y, or Z things wrong, that can leave an imprint on your mind, and even on you. I mean, as a kid, did you ever do anything to piss off your parents and they got mad at you? So you never did that thing because you were afraid your parents are getting mad at you again? I sure did. If you want a little mystery and supernatural element left in this story, there's still not really an explanation for how Anneliese knew of Valentin Fleischmann, that disgraced priest she saw as a demon. There's a loose thread suggesting that due to Anneliese being Catholic living in Germany, she may have learned or somehow come across Valentin Fleischmann during her studies, as the Franks were Germanic and Fleischmann lived in Edelben, Bavaria. This information may have influenced the supposed presence of Fleischmann as a demon, but it's just a theory and there's really no confirmation to it at all. And that's the story of Anneliese Michel. And I think no matter what your background or religious views are, we can all agree it's a tragic story. And although I opened by talking about The Exorcist, Anneliese Michel has nothing to do with the movie. And although Anneliese died in 1976, there's no evidence showing she watched the 1973 film. I'm sure she was aware of the film because it was huge in culture and religion, but there's nothing to show she was influenced by it at all. I've been Conrad Iacobellis, and I will see you in the next video.